The sky was never meant to look like that. Lyra had seen storms before, but never one that felt alive. It didn't just rage, it hunted. Lightning tore across the horizon like claws. The ground shook under her boots as she ran, her breathing ragged and shallow. Wind howled like a monster trying to swallow everything. The air itself burned her lungs. Thick with dust and static, her colony city, once bright with floating towers and shining streets, was gone. All that remained were broken lights and screaming winds. She looked back only once, long enough to see the great energy spire collapse into the dust, and she knew her world was ending. Lyra wasn't a soldier or a hero. She was a technician, a small worker who fixed power nodes in the outer districts. But now she was running for her life through streets full of sparks and metal debris. Every few seconds, the ground cracked and swallowed machines whole. Her communicator was dead, her suit's visor blinking red with warnings. Temperature unstable, oxygen low, storm category and unknown. She stumbled into a trench, sliding down through mud and wire. The wind screamed above her like a living creature. She could hear whispers in it, or maybe her own mind breaking under fear. For hours she had searched for any place to hide, and then she saw it, half buried under sand and broken metal, a bunker door, old, ancient, glowing faintly with yellow lights. No one had used bunkers since the early wars. Her people believed they were ruins from the lost age of humans. She hesitated, hand trembling over the panel. Her empire's law forbade entering unknown ruins. But the storm behind her didn't care about laws. She pressed her hand against the door. It hissed unlocked, and slid open with a heavy metallic groan. Cold air brushed her face. The smell of old metal and silence filled her lungs. She stepped inside, closing the door quickly before the storm could follow. The sound of the wind stopped instantly. For the first time in hours there was quiet. Only the soft hum of ancient machinery echoed through the walls. Her eyes adjusted slowly to the dim light. The bunker stretched into darkness, a long corridor filled with dust and silence. Lyra's boots echoed softly as she walked forward. There were strange marks on the walls, symbols she didn't understand. Her flashlight flickered over them, a circle, a line, and a shape that looked almost like a human hand. She swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. Her species had stories about humans, the monsters of old wars. The Empire said they destroyed themselves, unable to control their power. Some said they became ghosts, cursed to wander forgotten worlds. Lyra had never believed those stories until now, because something about this place felt wrong, too human, too quiet. As she moved deeper, the light changed. A faint glow came from another room at the end of the corridor. She stopped, her heart racing. Someone was inside. She could hear movement, slow, heavy, deliberate. Lyra froze, her breathing loud inside her helmet. Maybe it was a malfunctioning robot, or an animal that found shelter. She took one cautious step forward, then another. The sound grew clearer. A chair scraping, a soft cough, a voice, low and tired, said, "If you're coming in, close the door." Lyra's blood turned cold. That wasn't an alien voice. That was something else, something older, rougher, more human. Her hand shook as she lifted her flashlight toward the sound. In the corner of the room sat a figure, broad shoulders, pale skin covered in scars, eyes glowing faintly blue in the reflection of a dying lamp, and for a moment time stopped. The stories came back to her mind, about the species that once ruled the stars, the destroyers, the creators, the ones her empire called the human plague. But this one didn't look like a monster. He looked tired, alone, covered in dust and silence. His armor was old, cracked, bearing a faded symbol of a blue circle with white wings. He looked at her without fear, just calm recognition. Then he said again, "Close the door before the storm takes us both." Her hands moved without thought, pressing the panel to seal the bunker. The locks engaged. Shutting out the roaring world outside, she turned back, unable to speak. The human stood slowly, towering over her, his movements deliberate but slow. He didn't raise a weapon, didn't threaten. He just looked at her as if seeing a ghost. "You're not supposed to be here," he said quietly. Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "Neither are you." The silence stretched between them, filled with the hum of machines older than both their civilizations. Then the human turned toward the lamp and sat back down. He picked up a small metal object from the table, a broken communicator. "Storms like that don't come naturally," he muttered. "They send them when they want to erase something." Lyra's mind raced. Who was they? How long had he been here? Why was a human, a species thought extinct, alive beneath her colony's ruins. Before she could ask, the bunker lights flickered. The power core whined deep in the floor. He stood up again and looked at her with weary eyes. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow you'll need answers you're not ready to hear." She wanted to argue, but exhaustion pressed against her bones, so she sat near the entrance, clutching her broken scanner. Outside, the storm screamed like a dying world. Inside, the last human and one frightened alien shared the same silence, two survivors from different ends of history, waiting for dawn that might never come. And in the darkness, the human whispered softly to himself. Earth warned them not to follow. Lyra woke to silence. The storm outside had faded to a distant rumble, like a giant breathing in its sleep. Her visor showed faint light readings. The power systems were still alive inside the bunker. For a moment she forgot where she was, until she saw him sitting across the room, the human. He hadn't moved much since the night before, still wearing that broken armor, still staring at the small lamp on the table. It cast shadows across his face, deepening the tired lines under his eyes. She noticed how calm he looked, like someone who had seen too many storms to fear one more. Lyra's pulse quickened. She wanted to speak but didn't know what to say. Her empire had trained her to fear humans, to believe they were violent creatures that couldn't be reasoned with. But the man before her didn't match those stories. He wasn't angry or wild or cruel. He looked more like a ghost who had forgotten how to hate. Finally she spoke, her voice trembling. "Who are you?" The human turned his head slowly, his blue eyes glinting in the dim light. "Name's Ryan," he said quietly. "Commander Ryan Hale." "Terran Vanguard." Lyra's breath caught. Terran Vanguard. The name itself was forbidden. It belonged to the old human fleets that once fought the Galactic Empire long ago. Those fleets were said to be erased from existence. Yet one of their soldiers sat right in front of her. "Breathing, speaking, alive, you can take off the helmet," he said. "You'll suffocate if you keep breathing recycled air too long." She hesitated but did as he said. The air inside the bunker was heavy with metal and dust, but strangely clean. He must have been maintaining the systems all this time. "Why are you here?" she asked. Ryan didn't answer right away. He stood up and walked to a console embedded in the wall. His fingers brushed over old controls, and the lights around them flickered softly. "Because," he said, "humans don't die that easily." Lyra flinched at the tone, not angry, but tired. He looked at her again, scanning her with eyes that saw more than she wanted to reveal. "You're not military," he said. "So what's a civilian doing in a restricted zone?" "I was running from the storm," she replied. "The city is gone, everything destroyed." Ryan sighed. "Then you saw what they can do when they want to erase evidence?" "Who?" she whispered. "The same people your kind answers to," he said. "The Galactic Council." Lyra frowned, confused. The Galactic Council was supposed to be a peacekeeping force, the guardians of civilization, but his tone made them sound like executioners. "You're lying," she said softly. Though her voice carried no conviction, he smiled sadly. "Everyone thinks that until they see the truth." He walked deeper into the bunker. Gesturing for her to follow, reluctantly she did. They passed through narrow corridors, their steps echoing against metal floors. Every door they passed bore old markings and warnings. Numbers, human language. One of them opened automatically as they neared it. Inside was a chamber filled with holographic screens, all dark except one. A single projection showed a rotating image, a planet covered in blue and green. Lyra stared at it, mesmerized. "Is that your homeworld?" she asked. Ryan nodded. "Earth." She looked closer, noticing burn marks, scars of war across the continents. "What happened to it?" he answered softly. "We were betrayed." He touched the console, and the hologram shifted, showing fleets of ships, explosions, alien emblems mixed with human ones. "They said humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable," he continued. "So they decided to destroy us before we could grow stronger." Lyra's throat tightened. "That can't be true." "It doesn't matter if you believe it," Ryan said. "You'll see soon enough." He turned away, walking toward a heavy steel door at the end of the hall. "This shelter was one of the last human outposts before the fall," he explained. "I've been keeping it running ever since," Lyra followed, half in fear, half in curiosity. When the door opened, she saw a massive chamber filled with dormant machines, rows of pods, old weapons, and storage units all covered in dust. "What is this place?" she asked. "Humanity's reminder," Ryan said, "and my prison." He walked between the machines, touching each one like an old friend. "These were part of Project Haven," he said. "We tried to build safe worlds far from the war, but they found us anyway." Lyra's heart pounded as she looked at the strange devices, symbols she didn't recognize, tools far beyond her understanding. She turned to him, whispering, "You've been alone here for how long?" Ryan paused, looking at her with tired eyes. "Time stopped meaning anything after the first decade," he said. "I stopped counting after 50 years. Lyra's mind went blank. 50 years, her people didn't even live that long. How could a human survive alone under the surface for that much time? She realized then that the man in front of her wasn't just a survivor. He was a remnant, the last echo of a forgotten war, and somehow, he had lived long enough to see the empire that hunted his kind thrive above him. She looked at him again, this time not with fear but with quiet awe. The storm above the planet had ended, but Lyra sensed another kind of storm brewing inside the bunker, a storm of truth, of history buried under lies. She didn't know why, but she felt that meeting this human wasn't an accident. It was the beginning of something far greater. Ryan turned off the console and looked at her one last time before leaving the chamber. "Rest while you can," he said. "Tomorrow, you'll learn what your people never wanted you to know." Lyra stood in the dim light, staring at the image of Earth still faintly glowing on the screen. And for the first time in her life, she wondered if everything she had been taught about humans was a lie. The storm outside had ended, yes, but inside that bunker, another storm had just begun. When Lyra woke again, the air felt heavier. The lights in the bunker flickered like a heartbeat. Weak but steady, somewhere in the distance. Machines hummed, old. Tired but still alive, she stood up slowly, her muscles stiff from sleeping on the cold floor. Ryan was gone. For a moment, panic flashed through her mind. Then she heard the sound of metal tools clinking in the next room. She walked toward the noise, following the faint light. Ryan was working on a console, wires spread across the table. He didn't look up when she entered. "Did you sleep?" he asked quietly. She nodded, unsure how to speak to him. He adjusted a cable, sparks flashing across his hand. "I'm trying to bring the core online," he said. "This place is dying faster than I expected." Lyra's eyes wandered over the walls. There were strange markings everywhere, human writing, faded but sharp, drawings of ships, battle formations, maps of stars. And among them one symbol repeated again and again, a blue planet surrounded by wings. "That's Earth's mark," Ryan said, noticing her gaze. "It meant hope once." Lyra traced the shape with her finger. Her people never had symbols like that. Everything in her world was owned by the Empire. No individuality. No history of their own, but this mark, this world, looked alive. Like it had meaning deeper than power. "Your kind built all this," she whispered. Ryan nodded slowly. "We built it because we were afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of extinction," he said. His voice heavy with memory. He turned one of the monitors toward her. It flickered, showing old human recordings. Men and women in uniforms launching ships into space, smiling, waving at cameras. Their voices came through broken and static-filled. But Lyra could still hear laughter, joy, pride, hope. Then the scene changed. Explosions, fleets burning, planets falling. The last transmission froze on a soldier saluting as his ship disintegrated in fire. The screen went dark. Lyra stepped back, her chest tight. She had never seen such emotion, not in the sterile, ordered empire she lived in. Those humans fought even when they knew they would lose. "Why show me this?" she whispered. "Because they erased us from your history," Ryan said. "But we never disappeared." He turned back to his tools, his voice calm but sharp. "The Empire calls itself civilized, but it was built on our graves." Lyra's mind spun. Everything he said contradicted everything she had learned since childhood. But the sadness in his voice made it hard to doubt him. "Why didn't you fight back?" she asked. Ryan gave a bitter smile. "We did," he said. "We just lost." He reached under the table and pulled out a metal box. Inside were old devices, square chips, metal cards, and small holographic crystals. "These are the memories of my people," he said. "Each one holds a story, a name, a life." He handed her one. It glowed softly in her palm, showing a family, human parents and 2 children laughing beside a blue ocean. Lyra stared at it as tears filled her eyes. Her kind didn't have families like that. Children were raised in government wards, taught obedience and order, but here, in this small light, she saw something real, something warm. "I don't understand," she whispered. "That's what they didn't want you to," Ryan said. "To understand what makes us human." The air in the bunker shifted suddenly. A deep rumble echoed through the walls. Ryan moved quickly to the control panel, checking the readings. "The storm's shifting again," he said. "The surface isn't safe yet." He tapped a few keys, and a hidden door opened on the far side of the room. A staircase led downward into darkness. "What's down there?" Lyra asked. Ryan glanced at her. "Something I hoped I'd never have to use again." They descended together, each step echoing through the steel tunnels. The air grew colder when they reached the bottom. The room opened into a massive chamber filled with strange machinery. Rows of pods lined the walls, some open, some sealed inside the sealed ones. Faint lights pulsed like hearts. "What are these?" she whispered. "Preservation units," he said. "Humans who never woke up." Lyra's heart raced. "Are they alive?" Ryan's voice dropped low. "They were supposed to be." He brushed his hand across one of the pods, the glass covered in frost. "These were my crew," he said quietly. "We were sent to protect this world, but something went wrong during cryosleep." He turned to her, eyes shadowed with guilt. "When I woke up, they were gone, and I was alone." Lyra looked at the faces behind the glass. They were peaceful, untouched by time. It felt like walking through a graveyard that still breathed. "Why didn't you leave?" she asked softly. "Because someone had to remember," he said. He touched the central console and the lights brightened slightly. "This shelter wasn't just built to protect us, it was built to store what humanity once was." He pointed to a tall column in the center of the room, glowing with a faint blue light. "That's the core," he said. "It holds everything, our knowledge, our art, our mistakes, our truth." Lyra stepped closer, feeling warmth from it. It pulsed like a living heart for a brief moment. She felt something inside her shift, a quiet connection she couldn't explain. The light reflected in her eyes, filling her with both awe and fear. She turned to Ryan. "Why show me all this?" "Because you came here by fate," he said. "And fate has a cruel sense of humor." He paused, then added, "You're not the first of your kind to find this place." Lyra froze. "What do you mean?" Ryan didn't answer. He simply looked toward the ceiling, where faint footsteps echoed through the upper tunnels. His expression turned sharp, focused. "They've found us," he said quietly. "The Empire knows a human still lives." The lights flickered again. Alarms began to pulse softly. Lyra felt her blood turn cold as realization struck her. She had led them here. The storm outside had been only the beginning. The real danger was coming now, from above, and for the first time, she wasn't sure whose side she was on. The alarms grew louder. Red lights flashed along the metal walls like angry eyes opening one by one. Lyra stood frozen, her heart pounding against her chest. Ryan moved fast, pulling cables and closing panels. He didn't look scared, only ready. It was the quiet readiness of someone who had been through too many battles before. "They've locked onto the beacon signal," he said, his voice low but steady. "They're coming to erase this place." Lyra's throat tightened. "The Empire will destroy you." Ryan gave a dry smile. "They already tried that once." He turned toward her, his expression softer now. "You have to choose, Lyra," he said. "Run back to your people or help me protect what's left of mine." She wanted to speak, but words failed her. Her empire had taught her loyalty, obedience, control. But now, face to face with a human who had survived their lies, she wasn't sure who the enemy truly was. He tapped a command on the console and the screens lit up with data. Images, symbols, and old codes filled the air. Lyra's eyes widened. It was the history her empire had erased. Ryan pointed at the recordings. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "This is your empire's first contact report," he said. "The day they met humanity." The hologram came alive, showing alien ships approaching Earth's orbit. Lyra watched as a calm human voice greeted them, offering peace and alliance, but the transmission shifted, showing explosions, fleets burning, humans fighting to defend their home. "The alien fleet fired first," Lyra gasped. "They said humans attacked first," she whispered. "They lied," Ryan said quietly. "The Empire feared us because we didn't bow." He turned off the projection and faced her. Your leaders use that lie to build their power, he said. They told you humans were extinct to keep you afraid of what freedom looks like. Lyra felt dizzy. Everything she had been taught, all her lessons, all the propaganda twisted inside her like a blade. She stumbled back against the wall, shaking her head. No, it can't be true. It is, Rian replied. And now they've come to bury the truth again. A deep rumble shook the floor. Dust fell from the ceiling. Ryan ran to the storage racks and pulled out a long, black rifle, old but perfectly maintained. He checked the power cell, then tossed a smaller weapon to Lyra. You ever fired one of these? He asked. She stared at the weapon, confused. No, she said. We're not allowed to carry arms. Ryan nodded grimly. Of course not. Only the obedient are allowed to live. He moved toward the upper tunnel. The echo of boots and metallic steps grew louder from above. They're here, he muttered. Stay behind me. Lyra followed him through the dark hall, her hands trembling as she held the small weapon. When they reached the command chamber, she could already hear the heavy door groaning. Someone was cutting through it. Ryan crouched beside the console and began typing commands. What are you doing? She asked. Locking the core, he said. If I die, they won't get the data. You can't face them alone, she said. He gave her a look that froze her heart. Calm, steady, final. I've been alone for a long time, he said softly. The door exploded open with a flash of white light. Smoke filled the room. Silhouettes appeared. Armored soldiers, the Empire's insignia glowing on their chests. They shouted in her language, demanding surrender. Ryan didn't move. He fired once, clean, precise. The first soldier dropped before the others could react. Lyra covered her ears as blaster fire filled the air. The room flashed with blue light, smoke swirling like storm clouds inside the bunker. Ryan moved like lightning. He fought with practiced grace. Every shot a heartbeat, every move deliberate. Lyra had never seen anything like it. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to protect something deeper. To protect the truth, a blast hit the wall near her, throwing sparks across her armor. She fell to her knees, gasping for breath. Rian reached her side, dragging her behind a steel console. Stay down, he said. His voice was calm. Even as chaos raged around them, then she saw it. The insignia on one of the soldiers. It was her city's security division. Her people, her colleagues. And they were here to kill the only living human. The thought struck her like a lightning bolt. Her empire wasn't protecting them, it was erasing them. Ryan fired again, covering her retreat. But the soldiers were many, he shouted. Lyra, get to the lower level, activate the core shield. She hesitated. I don't know how. Yes, you do, he said. Your people built the control systems using our code. Follow the light patterns. She ran toward the corridor, dodging blaster fire. Sparks and smoke filled the passage, alarms screaming around her. Her fingers flew over the controls the way he had shown her. The machines responded, lights shifting from red to blue. The core began to hum, brighter and brighter. She looked back. The chamber was filled with fire and smoke. Ryan stood at the center, fighting like the storm itself. For a moment, she saw what made humans so feared. Not their power, not their weapons, but their refusal to surrender. The blast door shut behind her as she sealed the core chamber. Her breathing came in sharp gasps, her hands shaking, then silence. The gunfire stopped. The alarms dimmed. Only the steady hum of the core remained. Lyra leaned against the wall, her eyes wide with shock. Everything she thought she knew had shattered. Her empire was not the savior. It was the executioner. And now she was trapped between the two worlds. Above her, the storm roared again, shaking the earth. Below her, a dying human still fought to protect the truth. She closed her eyes and whispered, Ryan, please survive. Smoke still clung to the tunnels like a living shadow. The bunker hummed with deep metallic groans. Wounded but not dead, Lyra crouched beside the sealed core door. Her heart hammering in her chest, every sound felt louder now. Her breathing, the crackle of fire, the hum of energy through the walls. Then she heard footsteps, slow and heavy. She aimed her weapon toward the sound. But her hands shook. Ryan stepped out of the smoke. Armor scorched, one shoulder bleeding. His face was pale, but his eyes still burned with that quiet, unbreakable fire. They're gone, he said simply. Lyra's chest tightened. You killed them, he shook his head. No. The bunker did. They triggered the failsafes. It collapsed the upper level. He walked past her toward the control station. each movement careful, measured, like someone who had carried pain for too long. She followed, unsure whether to speak or stay silent.
He stopped before the core and placed his hand on its glowing surface.
The light responded to him, soft pulses echoing like a heartbeat. "They'll send more," Lyra whispered. "Yes," he said, "but they won't find us right away." He turned to her, his expression calm, almost gentle. "Now you understand why I stayed hidden," he said. "Every time they think humanity is gone, someone lights a spark again." Lyra felt small under his gaze. "You could have run, you could have left this world," she said. "I could have," Rian replied, "but then I'd be the last. And the last should remember." He pressed a command, and the core projected a hologram of the galaxy. Dozens of red zones blinked across the stars. "Those are Empire relay networks," he said. "They control all communication, all knowledge." He zoomed in on one faint blue point, hidden deep within neutral space. "This," he said softly, "is where the last human fleet vanished." Lyra stared, barely breathing. "They survived, maybe," he said. "Or maybe this signal is just a ghost, but it's enough." He turned off the map and looked at her again. "I can't rebuild humanity," he said, "but I can send the truth." She frowned. "What truth?" "The truth about the Empire, the Council, the war, everything they buried. If the galaxy hears what they did, they'll rise against them," Lyra said. Ryan gave a faint smile. "Not rise, remember. And memory is stronger than fear." He started gathering parts from the shelves. Circuits, power cells, comm chips. Lyra watched him work, his hand sure even through the blood. "What are you building?" she asked. "A transmitter," he said. "Old human tech, long range, encrypted. Built for war." She frowned. "They'll trace it." "They always do," he said. "That's why we'll make it look like a ghost signal from the past." Lyra hesitated, then helped him. He guided her hands, showing her where to fit the cables. Her people had taught her machines obeyed logic. No emotion, no soul, but when she worked beside him, the machines felt alive. Every spark, every hum carried meaning, and for the first time, she understood why humans were dangerous. Not because of their weapons, but because of their will. After hours of work, the transmitter stood tall, an ugly machine of wires, steel and light. Ryan stepped back, wiping the sweat from his brow. "It'll need an external antenna," he said. "The storm's interference is too strong underground." "You mean we have to go to the surface?" Lyra asked. He nodded. "Once the storm calms for a few minutes, we move." She looked at the bleeding wound on his shoulder. "You can barely stand," she said. "I've been worse," he replied, half smiling. She wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes silenced her. It wasn't pride, it was purpose. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the hum of the core. Lyra spoke first, her voice quiet. "When I was a child, they showed us images of humans, monsters with fire in their eyes." Ryan chuckled softly. "Fire was close enough. But you're not like that," she said. "You fight for something bigger." He looked at her with tired warmth. "We always did," he said. "That's why they feared us." The console beeped suddenly, atmospheric readings dropping. "The storm's breaking," Ryan said, standing. He picked up his rifle and the transmitter module. "Time to go." They climbed through the maintenance shaft toward the upper tunnel. Dust rained down as they moved. When they reached the hatch, Ryan forced it open. Cold wind rushed in, carrying the smell of ozone and burnt metal. The sky above was still churning, but the lightning had faded to distant flickers. Lyra looked out. Her world was gone. The city reduced to twisted ruins, the horizon burning faintly with energy storms. Ryan stepped out beside her, the wind tearing at his torn armor. "This is what peace looks like under the Empire," he said. Lyra shivered, not from the cold, but from the truth in his words. They reached an old communications tower half buried in sand. Ryan connected the transmitter to the base, fingers moving quickly. "Once I start the signal," he said, "they'll detect it within minutes." "Then why do it?" she asked. "Because someone somewhere will hear," he said. "And maybe they'll come." The wind howled again, stronger this time. He activated the device and a pulse of light shot upward. Cutting through the clouds, Lyra shielded her eyes. The tower glowed with bright blue energy, sending a ripple through the air far above. Satellites long dormant flickered to life. For the first time in centuries, Earth's forgotten code moved through the stars again. Ryan stepped back, his breathing heavy. "It's done," he whispered. Lyra looked at him. What now? He smiled faintly. Now we survive long enough to see who answers. The ground rumbled again. Far in the distance, ships were descending. Empire patrols had seen the signal. Ryan looked toward them, then back at Lyra. His eyes calm, resolved. Get to the lower tunnels, he said. I'll hold them off. No, she said. You'll die. He gave her the same half-smile he'd worn since the first moment she saw him. Humans don't die easily, he said. The wind roared louder, and for an instant, the storm clouds parted. Lyra saw stars, bright, endless, alive somewhere among them. A beacon pulsed back, faint, distant, but real. Ryan followed her gaze and whispered, They heard us. The ground trembled as the Empire ships broke through the clouds. Their engines howled like thunder, shaking the sky apart. Lyra stood beside the ruined tower, her eyes wide with fear. The wind whipped her hair across her face. Carrying sand and fire, Ryan adjusted his rifle. One arm pressed to the bleeding wound on his shoulder. He looked tired, older than the stars above, but still unbroken. They're coming fast, Lyra said, her voice shaking. I know, Ryan answered. His gaze fixed on the horizon. Silver drops descended through the storm. Troop pods cutting lines of fire through the clouds. They'll land in less than 2 minutes, he said. He turned to her, his voice calm but sharp. Get back to the bunker. I'm not leaving you, she said firmly. He smiled faintly. That's the problem with hope. It's contagious. The first drop pod slammed into the ground a few hundred meters away. The shockwave threw dust and smoke into the air. Dozens of armored soldiers stepped out, their visors glowing red. Ryan crouched behind a broken wall and readied his weapon. Remember what I told you? He said. Aim for the sensors, not the armor. Lyra nodded, gripping the small blaster he'd given her. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were steady. Blaster fire erupted across the ruins. Bolts of light carved through the dust. Striking stone and steel, Ryan moved like a ghost. Every shot precise, deliberate. He fought not with rage, but with purpose. Lyra followed his lead, firing in short bursts. Each time her bolt hit a soldier, she felt a strange mix of fear and power. The Empire troops advanced in perfect formation, but the storm fought against them. Winds howled, tearing at their flight packs. Lightning cracked down, striking their weapons with wild fury. Nature itself seemed to choose sides. The same storm that had destroyed Lyra's city now shielded her. Ryan's rifle overheated, glowing red. He dropped it and pulled out a smaller sidearm. Fall back, he shouted. They sprinted toward the collapsed communication tower, taking cover behind the twisted frame. Lyra's lungs burned, her legs trembling. She had never fought before, never even held a weapon until this day. Yet something inside her, something human, refused to break. Ryan looked at her, his face streaked with dust and blood. You did well, he said between breaths. She shook her head. They're too many. He nodded. They always are. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small metal cube. This is the transmitter core, he said. If I fall, you take it and run to the southern ridge. Run where? She asked. Doesn't matter, he said. Just keep the signal alive. Before she could reply, another explosion tore through the air. The ground split open, throwing them both backward. Lyra landed hard, her visor cracking. When she looked up, the tower was gone, replaced by fire and smoke. Ryan staggered to his feet, coughing, his armor cracked open. More drop pods fell from the sky, surrounding them like falling stars. He raised his weapon again, but his movements were slower now. Lyra ran to his side, trying to pull him toward the bunker. Ryan, please. You can't fight them all, she cried. He looked down at her, his eyes soft despite the chaos. Someone has to buy time, he said. That's what humans do best. She wanted to scream, to refuse to drag him away, but another explosion forced her back. Smoke swallowed them both, and through it, Ryan's voice came calm and strong. Go, Lyra. Keep the light burning. Then he stepped into the storm. The air erupted with fire. Blaster bolts flashed through the smoke like lightning. Ryan's silhouette moved between the ruins, one man against an army. Every shot he fired tore through the darkness. Every step he took slowed the Empire's advance. The storm seemed to answer his fury, roaring louder, brighter, alive. Lyra reached the lower hatch and looked back. She saw him standing alone beneath the raging sky. Lightning danced around him, blue and white, for a moment. He looked less like a soldier and more like a legend. The storm became his armor, the thunder his battle cry. Then the light swallowed him whole. Silence followed. The Empire ships hovered above, scanning the ruins, but the human signal had vanished beneath the storm's electric veil. Inside the bunker, Lyra clutched the transmitter core to her chest, tears running down her face. The machines hummed softly around her, waiting on one screen. Faint blue text blinked. Signal sent. Awaiting response. She sank to her knees, whispering his name. Ryan. Outside, the storm finally began to fade. The wind softened, the lightning died. And above the ruined world, far beyond the Empire's reach, a small beacon continued to pulse in deep space, steady, alive, unbroken. The storm finally died for the first time in days. Sunlight touched the ruined world. Golden light broke through the clouds, falling across the shattered towers and broken metal fields. Lyra opened her eyes slowly, her visor cracked but still working. The sound of thunder was gone, replaced by silence so deep it almost hurt. She lay there for a long time, staring at the pale sky. Every muscle in her body ached. Her lungs burned with every breath. The last thing she remembered was Ryan standing in the storm. One man against the impossible, and now he was gone. The bunker's emergency lights flickered beside her. The machines hummed softly, still alive. She sat up, clutching the transmitter core to her chest. It pulsed faintly, each flash a heartbeat. Signal sent. Awaiting response, the console repeated again and again. Ryan's voice echoed in her mind, calm and steady. Keep the light burning. Lyra stood slowly and looked around. The world above was destroyed, her people's cities reduced to ashes. But beneath the ruins, something still lived. The storm had washed away the Empire's ships, their metal carcasses scattered across the horizon. The sky was clear now, painted with unfamiliar colors, blue and gold. It was almost beautiful. She made her way back toward the surface. Each step was heavy, each breath harder than the last. When she reached the open ground, she froze. The battlefield stretched before her like a graveyard of machines. And at the center of it all, half buried in dust, stood a single figure, Ryan. His armor was broken, the once bright metal now blackened and cracked. He was kneeling, one hand resting against the ruined earth. His helmet lay beside him, his face still, peaceful. Lyra felt her chest tighten. She walked closer, her hands trembling. He looked almost asleep, as if resting after a long journey. A faint smile still curved his lips. She knelt beside him, her tears falling freely now. You kept your promise, she whispered. The wind carried her words softly across the silent land. She placed her hand over his, cold, unmoving, and then looked toward the sky high above. Faint lines of light danced among the stars. The transmission Ryan-sent was still traveling. Across systems, through darkness, beyond the Empire's reach. Lyra wiped her tears and stood again. The world around her was broken, but it was also quiet, free. She looked down at Ryan one last time, then whispered, I'll make sure they remember. She carried the transmitter core back to the bunker. The console greeted her with a soft chime. New text flashed on the screen. Signal acknowledged. Her breath caught. The message continued. Terran fleet, standby mode, reactivating. Her heart raced. She didn't fully understand what it meant. But she knew one thing. Ryan's message had reached someone. Somewhere in the deep silence of space, humanity had heard the call. The ground beneath her feet trembled again. But this time it wasn't fear. It was awakening. The machines inside the bunker powered up one by one. Ancient reactors hummed to life, lights chasing darkness from every corridor. She felt the warmth return to the air. Screens filled with new data, fleet coordinates, transmission relays, tactical links, all of it bearing the same mark. The blue planet with white wings, Earth's emblem. Lyra stepped closer to the central console. The hologram expanded, showing ships, massive, dark, beautiful, rising from forgotten hangars beneath the planet's surface. She gasped as one after another came online. The Terran vanguard had never truly died. They had been waiting, sleeping, buried under the silence of time, waiting for a signal, waiting for him, waiting for her. The voice that came through the console was calm. Old mechanical designation, Lyra, it said. Signal confirmed. Human presence verified. Reactivation complete. She stood frozen, unsure what to say. Then the voice added, Commander Ryan Hale, status, deceased. Mission integrity, transferred to surviving contact. Lyra closed her eyes, tears falling again. The machines around her bowed to a new purpose. Not conquest, not revenge, remembrance. Outside, the ground opened in slow, steady motion. A great platform rose from beneath the sand, carrying a single ship, sleek and black. Its hull shone under the golden light, scarred but majestic. The name along its side read TSS Resolute. Lyra stepped toward it, the transmitter core still glowing in her hands. The ramp opened, a soft voice from inside spoke. "Welcome aboard, Acting Commander." Her breath caught. She looked back one last time, toward the ruins, toward the man who had taught her what humanity truly meant. Then she whispered, "This isn't the end, Rian. It's the beginning." The engines of the ship roared to life. Dust swirled, the earth trembled. As the Resolute rose into the sky, sunlight reflected off its hull. Lyra looked down at the planet one last time. Half of her wanted to cry, half wanted to smile. The storm was gone, and for the first time, the galaxy would hear the truth far above the clouds. A distant transmission repeated endlessly into the stars. "Human contact confirmed, humanity endures."